Coasts can experience significant impacts from flooding and erosion, including loss of land, damage to infrastructure, and disruption to coastal habitats and ecosystems. Climate change is expected to worsen coastal flooding and erosion through sea level rise, more intense storms, and changing weather patterns. CLIVE is a geovisualization tool that simulates sea level rise and storm surge events to help us understand some of the potential impacts of climate change on coastal communities. Using a computer mouse or Xbox controller, users can quick fly to different communities across Prince Edward Island. In this video, we will demo the built-in guided tour by starting in Charlottetown. Charlottetown, PEI's largest center with a population of roughly 46,000, is primarily affected by coastal flooding. There are several known low-lying areas along the coast that already experience flooding during storms. As climate change leads to sea level rise and more intense storms, these areas are expected to experience higher flood elevations, putting more homes at risk. Eastern Charlottetown is also low-lying and susceptible to coastal flooding and surface flooding during intense rainfall. Summerside, PEI's second-largest population center, has a long southerly exposure of coastline with a waterfront that was infilled during the 1980s, which means that it is naturally low-lying. Future coastal flooding puts properties along the western coast at risk. Similarly, the eastern waterfront has some low-lying areas where it is important to avoid building new infrastructure. Coastal hazards can also impact natural areas, which can affect ecosystems and habitats. Maintaining these natural environments is an effective way to adapt to climate change by allowing coastal processes to occur naturally. The timing and direction of a storm play important factors in the impact of coastal flooding. When a storm coincides with high tide, the flood elevations will be higher, and if the wind is directed towards the coast, particularly in exposed areas, this can push water farther inland. Many efforts have been made to protect West Point Lighthouse from coastal erosion, but coastal flooding during storm events can lead to significant changes to the coastline through erosion. In a changing climate, sometimes difficult decisions must be made to manage coastal assets. PEI has many small communities that have an historical relationship with the coast and rely on the coast for their livelihoods. Small craft harbors must be built close to sea level, but should be built to accommodate frequent flooding events. Sea level rise can have a significant impact on small coastal communities. Lennox Island First Nation is protected from the open ocean by Hog Island, or Pituamkek, and Conway Sandhills, but has several low-lying areas including the causeway and sewage treatment plant. Sea level rise and more intense and frequent storms threaten these barrier islands. In cliff environments, like along the North Shore, flooding is not always a direct concern, but can lead to abrupt coastal erosion during storm events. The erosion of cliffs is also an important component of coastal processes, which provides a source of sediment to beach and sand dune systems. Maintaining and protecting natural environments is our best way to adapt to climate change. The Hebrides is a cottage community that is connected by a low-lying causeway. During post-tropical storm Fiona, significant flooding occurred that resulted in several cottages being swept into the ocean. Rebuilding without appropriate adaptation measures in flood-prone areas is not advisable, as flooding events will become more common in the future. Similar impacts to post-tropical storm Fiona were seen at Rustico Golf Course, which removed cottages from their foundations and caused significant erosion. PEI's North Shore has a large stretch of national park marked by sandy beaches and sand dunes. Fiona resulted in significant retreat of the dunes and a narrowing of the beaches, moving sand offshore. Over time, sand will be transported back onto the beach with tides and waves, which will be blown by the wind to rebuild the dunes. This is a natural process, but climate change threatens the timeline of these processes, which may have unseen consequences on habitat, ecosystems, and recreation. When hard armoring protection measures are installed on the coast, it affects the supply and movement of sediment, leading to the loss of beaches which provide natural protection, habitats, and recreation. Wetlands play a critical role in providing natural coastal protection by reducing the impacts of waves, storm surges, erosion, and flooding. Protecting and restoring these valuable ecosystems is essential for enhancing the resilience of coastal areas to climate change and coastal hazards. When development occurs within wetlands, it disrupts the natural environment and can lead to environmental degradation. Infrastructure in these environments is at particular risk of flooding due to the low-lying nature of these areas, and may require intervention to protect, leading to further environmental degradation. The wetlands around Mount Stewart provide protection against erosion and act as a sponge to absorb excess water. However, the community is low-lying and has experienced flooding during storms in the past. Higher flood elevations in the future threaten more of the community. Maintaining green space in flood-prone areas is a great adaptation measure. The green space along St. Peter's Bay Causeway is a good example of this, where there is minimal infrastructure at risk during current intense storms. The flood elevations in a changing climate, however, will reach farther inland, putting homes and businesses at risk. Post-tropical storm Fiona resulted in significant amounts of erosion along PEI's north coast and some of the worst flooding ever recorded at Newfranche and North Lake harbors. The Suez Causeway is a critical piece of infrastructure that is prone to flooding, but is surrounded by beaches and wetlands that provide natural protection. An offshore breakwater has been installed that is leading to the natural rebuilding of the beach. The Suez Causeway is a good example that working with natural processes can be a better adaptation measure than trying to resist the natural processes. The waterfront areas of the Three Rivers communities should expect flooding during storm surge events. Upriver communities are better protected from wave action, but elevated water levels from storm surges can still reach these communities. Stratford is at a low risk of coastal flooding because of its generally high elevation. Extensive shoreline armoring has been installed along the shoreline to protect against coastal erosion. Hard coastal armoring can have an environmental impact and disrupt coastal processes. Whenever possible, hard armoring should be avoided, and by understanding coastal risk during the development process, we can better site our infrastructure. Important nearby coastal ecosystems absorb coastal floodwaters with its extensive wetlands. This area is extremely low-lying and not suitable for development. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the future impacts of sea level rise and storm surges on Prince Edward Island. For more information, please visit the CLIVE website.